Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to Synthesizer Spotlight, episode 2. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Mother-32, which is a beautiful little semi-modular monosynth from Moog. Sadly, this is not a sponsored video. I did not get one of these from Moog. I actually bought it from a really nice and talented producer secondhand on Kijiji. We're going to skip the unboxing portion of this video and just get right to the good stuff. I will of course be talking about how this synthesizer works with electronic wind instruments, and today I'll be using the new rad, but everything that I show you will also be applicable to EWI or most other digital wind instruments, so long as you can connect it with 5-pin MIDI to this input over here. In this video I'm going to show you some of the cool sounds that I figured out how to make with this thing, so without any further ado, let's check it out. So to start off here, let's just unpatch everything, take away all the patch cables, and start from scratch. I'll just go through the settings that I have here. Right now, VCO wave is in the upwards position on the square wave. VCO mod source is in the downwards position on LFO. VCO mod destination is in the upwards position on pulse width. LFO wave is in the downwards position on triangle. VCF mode is in low pass. VCF mod source is in EG, which stands for envelope generator. Sustain is on. VCA mode is also in EG, and VCF mod polarity is also in the plus position. If I use these little buttons down here to play, this is what it sounds like. But of course, we're not going to be using those buttons. We are going to be using a digital wind instrument, so I'm going to hook that up right now. I'm going to go ahead and plug this end of the 5-pin MIDI cable into MIDI in, and the other end is actually already plugged into the MIDI out on my Panda MIDI beam, which is a wireless receiver for the new rad. Now if I play it, it's going to sound like this. As you can tell, I've already got the glide rate set at a pretty generous level, but nothing crazy. I love using glide with all of my synthesizers. It covers up some of my technical deficiencies, which is great. If I turn it all the way down, it sounds like this. I'm gonna turn the mix dial so we get rid of some of that noise. Now we just have a straight up square wave. I'll put some of that glide back. So the first thing we gotta do is figure out a way to get some expression out of this. Right now, no matter how hard or soft I blow, it's always the same sound, same volume. Thankfully, the Mother-32 has a really handy MIDI assign feature. Basically, you can tell the Mother-32 to listen for a certain CC message, and then that will get converted into CV and sent out of this part of the patch bay here. I've already set it to listen for CC number 2, so I'm going to go ahead and patch the assign output into the VCF cutoff. So now we're getting a little bit of expression, and that's great. If I move the cutoff knob all the way to the left, then we'll get much more and it'll be much better. Alright, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. No, I'm just kidding. We got way more to go. I think the next thing that I want to do is I'm actually going to patch the assign into this part of the patch bay where it says MULT for multiple. Basically what this does is it takes the CV coming out of assign and then it sends it out through MULT 1 and MULT 2. So now I can actually take the CC signal from the breath control and I can patch it to multiple things. So I'm going to patch MULT 1 into VCF cutoff, which is going to have the same result of what we just did, but I'm going to patch MULT 2 into VCF resonance. So now every time I blow into my instrument, the filter cutoff will open and the resonance will increase as well, and it'll have a bit of a punchier sound. We can change the resonance dial over here. I think that's a nice place for it to be. If the resonance is too high, then that sound kind of like takes over a little bit, and it's cool. But I find it a little bit distracting. So we'll turn it down over here. And now I think it just adds a little bit of emphasis to the really loud parts of our phrases. So this is pretty cool. What else can we do? Well, we are playing a square wave, so as you probably guessed, we can mess with the pulse width. And that's cool. We can just change it like that with that dial, but what if we want to change it with our breath control? A patch that I like to make in other synthesizers is one that narrows the pulse width the more you blow into it. So how do we do that here? Well, first of all, we're going to flip this VCO mod source dial into the upwards position. This means that instead of the modulation being controlled by the LFO, the modulation is actually going to be controlled by either the envelope generator that exists inside Mother-32, or, in our case, by any CV messages going to this VCO mod input in the patch bay. So I'm going to go ahead and patch MULT 2 into VCO mod, and then I can use this mod amount dial to control how much pulse width modulation is being applied. So now, if we flip the switch into the downwards position, the pulse width is being controlled by the LFO again. So here's what that sounds like. I'll slow down the LFO rate so it's a little bit more obvious. So you can see when this LED is at its brightest, the pulse width modulation is being affected all the way, and that actually results in a little bit of a cut of the sound. So I will dial this back just a little bit. I can turn up the LFO rate and things will go really crazy. So as you probably guessed, this provides us with a new opportunity for temporal control. If we patch MULT number 2 into LFO rate, then we can change the speed of this modulation with our breath. So you can see here when I blow harder into the instrument, the light flashes faster. I'll turn down the amount a little bit, make this whole thing just a little bit more subtle. So where do we go from here? How about instead of the LFO controlling the pulse width, we have it control this mix parameter here. In its default state, this mix parameter lets us mix between our chosen waveform and some white noise. Let's see what this sounds like when I patch the triangle waveform of the LFO into the mix parameter. So LFO triangle over here, and then we want mix CV. Maybe we'll turn up the LFO rate. Let's turn up the LFO rate a lot. So you might be asking yourself, wait a minute, this synth has two types of oscillators, right? Is there any way that we can hear both the square and the saw wave at the same time? We can, if we patch VCO saw out into external audio, then this mix dial now affects how much of the saw wave we hear versus the square wave, and the noise is completely overridden. This is a good way to get that effect that we had previously, but like toned down a little bit. Alright, let's unpatch everything and start fresh with this new mix of saw wave and square wave. So let's take out our two LFO modulation cables. Now we're left with breadth controlling the filter from MULT 1 and the saw wave going to the external in. We can do some fun stuff with this, like slowly crossfading between the two waveforms with an LFO. So we just patch LFO triangle into mix CV. When this LED is all the way dim, it's a square wave, and when it's all the way bright, it's a saw wave. Let's speed that up a little bit. And by the way, if we unpatch this, then this mix dial just lets us go between saw and square wave. So if you want half and half, then we just put the dial facing up. And we can of course change the pulse width to slightly change the tone. Anyway, so our LFO is slowly crossfading between the two waves. So that sounds cool, but what else can we modulate with the LFO? Well, resonance is always fun. So we'll just patch that into VCF resonance over here. We'll keep it kind of on the subtle side for now. Another output that's worth mentioning is KB out. This stands for keyboard, and basically what it does is it takes all of the incoming MIDI pitch info and it converts that to control voltage. What that means for us is that we can, to a certain extent, use pitch to control the LFO rate. This allows us to put the LFO dial really high and produce a different note for every pitch that we play, as opposed to having it be a steady, constant drone the whole time. So we'll patch KB into LFO rate. And you can see that as advertised, the rate of the LFO changes with the note that I'm playing. So let's turn it up a little bit. Let's compare that to how it was before when you didn't have KB patched into the LFO. You hear how it's always has that in it? That's the pitch that the LFO is at when it's not being controlled by the keyboard. Now that the LFO rate is being changed with every note, we no longer have that constant drone. I find that setting the LFO really high like this and using the KB out to control the rate of the LFO in a way that is complementary to the pitches that I'm playing is a great way to get really rich tones out of the MOOG Mother-32. So I was just editing this part of the video and I thought of another fun use case of controlling the LFO rate with the keyboard. So I'm going to go ahead and show that to you because it's pretty cool. So we're going to patch keyboard out into LFO rate. By the way, the Mother-32 is connected to my keyboard right now, and it's on my music stand where it usually lives. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to use the LFO as an audible oscillator. So what we're going to do is we're going to patch LFO triangle into external audio, and then we're going to turn the mix dial all the way to the right. So now we're just hearing the LFO. I have the LFO turned all the way up. This is as high as it goes. And the thing about the LFO on the Mother-32 is that it has an upper range of, I think, about 600 Hertz. So it's not always the most in tune, especially in the higher register. But if we turn it down, we can get a nice sub-oscillator. And we can use this mix dial to blend it in with the other sound wave that we have. We could also use the square wave of the LFO to get a square wave instead of the triangle wave. So now I'll patch LFO square into external audio. Then we'll get a slightly brighter sound. Here's what that sounds like. You know, it sounds like a square wave. We can't mess with the pulse width with this one, but we can mix it with another square wave. And kind of get some like rudimentary, slightly out of tune polyphony. Anyway, I just thought that was pretty cool and worth adding to the video. So with this synth patch, the way that I have it right now, I actually have quite a bit of control over the tone using just resonance, mix, pulse width, LFO, and if I really want to get crazy, VCO mod amount. Let's play around. That's it for this video. Hope this gives you an idea of what the MOOG Mother-32 is capable of when paired with a digital wind instrument. If you have one of these, let me know what you think of it and how you like to use it with your instrument. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. And if you found this video helpful or interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.